Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Lon, and she's here today to share with us her new oracle deck, Sacred Geometry of Relationships. Now, Lon was born and raised in Holland, where she attended art school and worked in the advertising and graphic arts industry. She now lives in San Diego, California, and creates sacred geometry art images that are a visual meditation tool or activations that help people to navigate these changing times. She offers lectures and workshops and intuitive counseling to support a new way of thinking to activate people towards becoming fully multidimensional human beings. She is the author and the artist of the 2016 Nautilus Award winner, Sacred Geometry Activations Oracle Deck. So let's welcome to the show, Lon.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
And what an honor it is to have you here. My goodness, I love this deck. It's amazing. And so I have to ask you, what inspired you to create this deck?
Well, I've been working with sacred geometry for a while, for a couple of years, and I have a previous deck that came out in 2016. And I just kept on going, making more activations, more images that are based on sacred geometry. And what I saw around me in the world is that the main thing that people are so occupied with in their lives is relationships. And I started thinking about it, and I figured, that is such a huge part of how we live our lives and how we understand our world is through relationships. So I thought, what if I could just make a whole deck with all concepts and qualities that are at the core of relationships, just to help us understand more of how we relate to each other and how to spark and enliven our relationships.
So for our listeners that are new to sacred geometry, what is that?
Well, sacred geometry, it's actually a term, we can break it up in two words. The term geometry has to do with how we measure the earth. Geo means earth. So it's the measurement of the earth. And the sacred part refers to that it actually appears that there is some sort of a divine architecture or a divine blueprint that is underneath everything in creation. Like when you look around, it turns out that everything is based on mathematical principles. Like the way flowers grow, think about, for instance, a cauliflower, or think about a sunflower. Like the way that core is formed, like the flowery and the core of the flowers, it turns out that looks like there's a repetition of patterns. We see it in star formations. We see it even in our DNA. So even at the core of us, it turns out that we are built on those same kind of principles.
So how does knowing that help us as we're working through relationship issues? Because, everyone we know has problems with their relationships, right?
Yes. The best way that I can describe it for me is by knowing that there is an underlying blueprint that is underneath everything. It helps us to find harmony into chaos. So for me, it's if I know that and I see that around me in the natural world, it helps me also to find repetitions and cycles in my own life, like things that keep repeating themselves or things that keep showing up in my life. And it helps me to recognize them even in my relationships. Sometimes we find ourselves in that we attract the same kind of friends or the same kind of partners that have similar attributes. And once we become aware of that, if we become aware of patterns and repetitions, then we can actually do something about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And how empowering that is. Because I think a lot of times when people think about relationships, they don't realize that there's really things that they can do, especially when we talk about sacred geometry, that will help, be a benefit for them in navigating through all that.
Yeah, exactly. See, I've discovered, and that helps me tremendously. I think we all go in relationship with people. Every relationship that we are in our lives, whether it's a significant other or whether it's like a family member or even our neighbor or even the person that we just meet for a moment at the grocery store, every person that touches us had something for us to notice and something for us to contemplate, like a little gift. And even the people that trigger us, those are often the most precious gift, and that helps us to look at ourselves. A relationship is helps us to self-reflect. It helps us to get to know ourselves, like what is it that we need or that we want to live a life in which we feel happy and fulfilled. Like what kind of a person fits in there? How do we align ourselves with that, with people, but also how do we align ourselves with circumstances in our lives that make us happy?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, this Oracle deck it's absolutely gorgeous. Did you do the artwork for
Thank you.
this? Yeah.
Yes, I do everything. I do the artwork and I write everything as well.
Oh my goodness, that is such a journey because getting that all together, I mean, that really takes a lot of insight.
It does. It's what it builds up over a couple of years, but it's something that is so. I mean, if we talk about like that, everybody comes in with a certain gift in their lives. I think it's mine is just I've always been fascinated with human relationships and why things are the way they are and why are they showing up. I never believed in coincidences. For me, it was always like there is a reason, there is repetition, there's patterns, there is an underlying like threads that go through everything. And if we learn how to see those, then things make more sense. So I've always been writing and drawing and doing all that to find that. So it comes pretty natural to me, and I love doing it. It's my happy place for sure.
Have you been doing this for as long as you can remember?
Not specifically the sacred geometry. I think the sacred geometry is just slowly started deriving from all the art that I did. But yes, I was that child that was always making collages and drawing things, and I was always rearranging the furniture in the house. I was always trying to harmonize every aspect in my life. And that is, from my environment, like my home environment, like where do you place the furniture, what kind of a lighting do you use, to like I was always trying to make everybody get along and solve conflicts between people, so harmonize the relationships around me. Um, and that eventually led me to go do art school because that was all about, imagery and pictures and meaning of pictures. And from there, I slowly moved more into this, sacred geometry at some point showed up.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, you could tell that it's really a heartfelt journey for you because, I mean, these images are just stunning.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I still am in wonderment about it myself. Like when I work on this and when I sit with them, because some of them I know what they're going to be. Sometimes just have certain concepts that I think like I really want to make an image for that because I think the world needs more of it. Like compassion. That was one that I set out. I wanted to see like what does compassion look like? What does, can I create an image that evokes that emotion that helps us to get into that state of being with an open heart in a compassionate state of mind. So that one I set out to really make it that way. But sometimes they come to me and the image is there before I know what they are. And I just have to sit with it. I have really big screens on my computer. So I have it on my computer and I sometimes spend just hours sitting in front of it with my cup of tea and just looking at it going like, who are you or what are you and what are you trying to tell me? Because I believe that there's stories in these images. They talk, they work with you, they evoke emotion, they tell stories, they help us to contemplate. It's almost like they're visual meditation tools. I call it like meditating with your eyes open.
I love that. It's interesting because I know you're getting just huge feedback from people using, the deck. What are some of the experiences been shared with you about how they're using this in their daily lives?
Well, I get a lot of feedback from people that it makes sense. I have people on Instagram actually that share their day. A lot of people do like daily drawings. And the interesting thing is I have a whole bunch of followers of really young people, like people in their 20s that didn't necessarily grow up with any of these concepts. And they never really were exposed to Oracle decks. And mine is the first one that they came across, and they are using it on a daily basis. I think a lot of people, including myself, I just draw a card at the beginning of the day. And then my question is just show me something that would be good for me to contemplate during the day. Like, give me a concept or a principle that I can think about while I go through my day. So I think that's a really powerful and a really simple thing to do. You can just keep the card out and put it somewhere where you can see it and just be reminded.
So does using the deck create like a stronger mental activity for the people that are using it?
Yes. And it's sometimes it's reminders. Like, if you draw a card like grace and you read about what grace really is, and you start contemplating like what does that mean? And you start realizing like, wow, this is something that the world could use more of. For me, it's a constant reminder. Like, if I go through my daily life and I come in situations where I get triggered or I get irritated or I get anxious or I get overwhelmed, then I get reminded of like, ooh, grace. Like, how do I get back in that inner state of mind of being graceful about this? So it's something to hold on to. I sometimes lovingly say like it's like having friends in a box. The cards, like what you can expect from these cards is that they just give you loving feedback, a little bit of an insight and a little bit of support, just like what you would expect from a friend. So friends in a box.
You gotta love that, because you really do end up developing this really deep connection with the deck, right?
Yeah, I do, and most of the people that work with it and do as well. And then part of it is also a lot of the cards in the deck are actually personal soul portraits. So I take concepts that I put in imagery or sacred geometry, but one of the most powerful things that I do is I actually do that for people as well. So I tune into people's energy and I go on a journey with them into the realm of their soul. Like, who are you at a soul level? What did you come in with? What are your dreams? What are your visions? What is your superpower? And I tune into that. And then I translate that into an image like this. Because I truly believe that we all come in with specific skills and specific qualities that we are here to expand upon and grow with, but also to share with the world. So a lot of the cards in this deck, even the cover card, the grace card, is a soul portrait of a client of mine. And this was a woman, and she came to me, and just sitting with her and just watching her and watching the way she moved and the way she described the world and the way she described herself to me, and the feeling that I got sitting with her was like, oh man, she was so graceful. She was just grace embodied. I knew immediately, like, wow, you embody grace. How beautiful. So
Wow.
that's really powerful. Yeah.
That's just amazing.
So when you have that on your wall, a soul portrait, your own soul portrait on the wall, it's like looking at the mirror of your soul. So instead of looking in the mirror and seeing your physical vehicle, because by now I think most of us kind of realize that we are so much more than just our bodies, right? So the soul portrait kind of shows you an interpretation of a different aspect of you, your soul aspect, something that is expressed in colors and shapes and symbology and numerology and form.
So let's say, we are connecting with the deck and using it. Is there a way that the illustrations interact with our own energies?
I believe so. I totally believe so. But I believe that everything is energy, and I believe because we are made of sacred geometry ourselves, I believe that our soul, we on a soul level, on a subconscious level, we intrinsically feel incredibly drawn to something like sacred geometry design. So it starts working with us. I've had feedback from people that say that they have it on their walls, and that all of a sudden, like they have different dreams, or they just feel different, or they just spend time sitting in front of it and just looking at it. And that's what I personally do. I have them in my own house and in my studio, and I switch them out because I sometimes feel like looking at a different one. But that's what I do. I just sit in front of it and I look at it, and I find new layers and different energies, and it keeps on growing. It's almost like it's alive. It morphs, and sometimes I find completely different layers in them that I didn't even see before. Oh wow, I haven't seen it like that, and that to me is a representation. It's symbolic of life. You know, I think it teaches us that there is many different perspectives of looking at things. And we find that oftentimes it's not even our circumstances that determine whether we are happy or not. Oftentimes it's our perspective on it. It's our state of mind. So if we can change our perspective, then we can change the way we feel. And these pieces help us find different perspectives, find different ways of looking at things.
I would think that also involves, some spiritual growth as well, because if we're seeing different parts of an image that really is speaking to us, we're really in a different place then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like for instance, I have the kindness activation. I have it in my home on my wall, and I am a single mom, and I have a teenage son. And as many of you probably know, sometimes going through the teenage years with a child brings out interesting aspects of both of us. You know, it makes our relationship very dynamic at times. And just having that kindness and grace activation on my wall is just a constant reminder to fall back into like understanding, compassion, kindness, grace. You know, it's like something to hang on to. So that's why I have it around. And it helps me to evolve as a human being, to view the world with kinder eyes and with more grace and with more compassion.
Gosh, couldn't we all use a little of that, right?
Absolutely, right? Yeah, for sure.
Just have a little bit more of that in our lives.
Yeah, and I also think, the world, I don't think any of us haven't noticed that the world is kind of crazy right now, doesn't it? I mean, it's chaotic, and time seems to be really, really going fast. I don't know about you, but I can't even remember when New Year's was, and it wasn't even like 4 weeks ago. Everything seems to be speeding up, and it seems to be very fast. And I think it is because we are kind of moving out of three-dimensionality, and we're moving more into a time of multidimensionality. And to me, that means that we are starting to implement layers like of subtle energy, like the stuff that's inside, that comes to us through our intuition, and that comes to us through our subconscious. And I believe that these pieces and sacred geometry design is a language. It's a multidimensional language that helps us on a different level than just words.
Yeah, that's such a huge impact that makes. And, it's interesting because as people are on their spiritual journey, they're looking for these types of things. And I believe that your Oracle deck is a great resource to make these shifts and adjustments throughout our day and throughout our week.
Yeah, and actually, I was inspired by all the feedback that I'm getting worldwide, and it's so amazing for everybody that has my deck. And thank you so much for the support, because I actually connect with people from all over the world, and it's been incredible. And I hear you. I hear the people and what they're looking for, and so I've actually started. I'm going to launch this really, really soon. I'm going to launch a program online, a live online, but it's going to be called Modern Merlin, and it's a 12-week program. And that's exactly what we're going to do. In 12 weeks long, I'm going to take people on a journey through all these concepts of like what is reality and what is three-dimensionality and what is multidimensionality and how does magic go into this? Because I truly believe that magic was the word that we used before, and now we call it manifestation. Manifestation is a buzzword that we hear everywhere, and it's just a new word for magic. And I think there's enormous need and desire for community and a new way of thinking. We need new paradigms. We need new belief systems. So I'm going to pour that all together in a 12-week journey, and sacred geometry is going to be part of that. And we're going to play with the decks, and we're going to look at all of that to see if we can make sense out of what's going on in the world and how do you apply it to your life. And how do you make sense of it? And how do you find harmony and balance and ultimately like happiness and fulfillment in these times?
So we've talked about quite a bit, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love for us to go into greater detail. You talked about like different things that would actually have natural occurring shapes of sacred geometry. What other things could you give us as far as examples, and how are they within us as well?
Well, some of the things that a really good example of sacred geometry, and most of us have seen it, is the Nautilus shell. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like that shell, yes. You see it in lots of pictures. Well, that shell by itself, it turns out that the universe loves spirals. Like a lot of things in creation are based on spirals, like even how most plants grow. It grows in spirals. It's when you look at a plant, like how the leaves are even around the stem, when it grows, it has a spiral form like where the leaf is positioned. So we find this spiral really everywhere. We find it in the way a wave breaks in the ocean. We find it in the shape of a fetus, of a baby even. We find it in lots of things in the star formations, in galaxies. We find it in nautilus shells. We find it in sunflowers. And it turns out that there's formulas to make this spiral that you can apply to it. So we're actually, many of us are much more familiar with it than we realize, Once you start looking for it, you will find it everywhere.
It'd be interesting to see if these spirals also happen within our daily lives, such as coincidences and things that are occurring naturally.
Well, I read somewhere, and that really resonated with me. I read somewhere that they say that time actually goes in the same kind of a spiral. So what happens is decades ago or however long ago, throughout time, we've been on the outskirt of that spiral, and now we are moving more to the inward of the spiral, which kind of explains why things are going faster and faster and faster and faster. And when I read that, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because that's how it feels, right? It feels like everything is speeding up because we're getting more, the loop is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
What do you think that represents?
I think it represents, ultimately, it's going into a time where, like I said before already, like I touched upon it, where things are becoming more multidimensional. And I think we are being invited and almost forced to be living in the moment. So I think it's going that the further you go to the core of that spiral, the more you land in the moment, and the more everything is going to make sense if you stay in the moment. Because if you try to even now, it's hard to think about a couple of weeks ago, and it's hard to think about very far ahead. So I think it's teaching us to stay in that moment. And what we've been hearing for years already, like people like Eckhart Tolle that wrote a book like, The Power of Now, I think it's becoming more prevalent each day, like to actually stay in that moment, because otherwise it's very easy to spin out and to be completely lost in the chaos and the tumultuous times.
Oh, isn't that the truth, right? So, I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. I don't know about you, but these days I focus on today, and I focus on the next hour. And I just set my goals in little chunks. Like, this is what I'm doing now. And I can't think that far ahead because I will spin out otherwise. So, and
yeah.
then thinking about that spiral, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Stay in that moment, stay in that moment.
Yeah, there's just so much with that going on. So, it's interesting. You're right. I mean, you look at, we just had the end of the year, and it's like, it does feel like it's been months ago,
Doesn't it? Doesn't it feel
Mm-hmm.
like really long ago? It's really not that long ago. It's a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
I think it's getting stronger. Even things that happened a couple of days ago, it's like, really, that was last week. so, so to prevent, to make this really practical, to prevent that we lose our minds in that process,
Mm-hmm.
it, to me, the whole idea of sacred geometry and how we find it everywhere and understanding how everything is energy and how everything in the universe kind of works according to the same principles, it has helped me to make sense of my own life. Just understanding like that if I feel that there is chaos, it just tells me that I haven't found the common thread. I haven't found the repetition or the pattern. So it's up to me to start digging, like, okay, so why is this happening? Where's the pattern? What is my contribution for this going on in my life right now? So it gave me much more a sense of control, might not be the right word, but something like that. It empowered me knowing that, I'm not just a victim of circumstances or a victim of what's going on in my life. I can have an active co-creational relationship with the universe or whatever, with spirit or, what's going on in my life.
Yeah, I think that offers a lot of hope for people that maybe feel like things are really out of
Yeah,
control. It's like, okay,
exactly.
there's a way for me to
Yep.
make sense of all this.
Exactly. Well, that's also one of the reasons why I started developing Modern Merlin, the program, because that's mostly the question. Like I offered like free readings online for a long time, and I talked to so many people, and mostly what people are looking for is just to sit with me for a little bit and to help them make sense out of what's going on in their lives.
Yeah,
That's
I can
mostly
understand
it,
that. Mm-hmm.
right? So that made me realize, like, okay, how can I make this in a wider scale so that I can reach more people? Because the one-on-ones, they are lovely. I mean, I love doing it, but I can't do that all day, and there's too many of you out there. So, and I think part of it is because we need to shift the way we know how things work. And I don't think anybody teaches that yet, right? In schools, they don't teach you that.
No, we kind of missed that day, didn't we?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's there yet, and it applies
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, right? And if you see, like most of our systems and our structures that we were counting on and hanging on to, like our health system or our educational system or our political system, none of them really work anymore, and that's part of the reason why people are kind of frantically scrambling around trying to find something to hold on to, and it's just not there because we haven't really given them a new model of how it all works and how it all actually is connected and how it all ties into each other.
Now, isn't that the
And that's where
truth?
I want to
Yeah.
go. Yeah. And I think these pieces, these sacred geometry design, I think it just helps us to feel connected to something larger. It helps us it just reminds us at a soul level. It's almost like a reassurance for the soul, like, you're okay. You're actually magnificent. You're a beautiful being and you can do this. And there's actually a lot of love and light and happiness that you can create in your life. You just have to figure out how it all fits together, It's like a puzzle.
And on that note, is there like activities that help us better connect this, to this kind of energy? Like if we did yoga or meditation?
Yeah, for me, for sure. I totally, I meditate every morning, and I totally notice that if I don't, because like everybody else, I sometimes just fall out of that repetition. And if I don't, I totally notice a difference. And it doesn't even have to be that long. I mean, I just start right when I wake up, even before I'm really awake. I kind of roll out of bed. I kind of crawl to the couch. I sit on the couch and I use guided meditations because that helps me, because I like to listen to something that tells me what to do. Like, they tell me like what to think about, where to go with my mind. And so that totally helps me.
That seems really beneficial for a lot of people, because they need kind of just to get out of that headspace,
Yeah, and often when you say like, go into meditation, when personally also, if I just sit down and I just try to be quiet, that doesn't work. My monkey mind will take over and it will start throwing all kinds of thoughts and practical things at me. And so I am just one of those people. I like either listening to something like music, but even like a guided meditation. And I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you are familiar with his work.
Oh, yeah.
But he offers fantastic guided meditations. And the ones that I like very much is his morning and evening meditation, because they're pretty short. They're like 22 minutes. And that's doable. So that's how I start my morning. And I find if I do that, I am much more in a peaceful place and much more in a place of feeling connected to that space of like, yes, I belong. Yes, I am here on purpose. Yes, I can figure this out. It just helps me to stay inward. It helps me to stay centered, basically. So meditation for me is a big one. Connecting to nature always helps, I think, and I always advise all my clients as well. Like, if you really feel chaotic or you feel anxious, go outside, go hug a tree, go just sit against a tree and just start thinking about this tree. Like, this tree probably has been here sometimes for decades and sometimes hundreds of years. And think about like the big roots that are going into the earth and how strong it is and how much beautiful shade it's giving you. And think about how trees go through cycles as well. They lose their leaves and they drop the leaves, and then in the spring they start blooming again. And everything goes in cycles. It's good to remember that.
Yeah, how important is that, especially as we're going through this journey and, we're all kind of helping each other get to this place where we can find that inner peace. And I really feel like your Oracle deck helps with that. Goodness, Lon, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Yeah, well, I am actually right now, I'm in the process of, I have a website, and my website is lon-art.com, lon-art. So in between lon and art, there's a hyphen.com. And I am actually launching a new website within now and probably 10 days or so. And there's going to be much more information about how to become part of the community and the Merlin program and the Oracle decks and the soul portraits and all of that. And they can follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram, not so much on Facebook, because I love Instagram because it's such a medium for visual. And that's really what my stuff is about. So my Instagram handle is lon_art, because Instagram doesn't do a hyphen. So.
Oh, I know how that is too. A lot of my personal and just creative information is also on Instagram. I mean, I love posting there. Lon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Absolutely. It was fun. And it goes by so fast. Talk about like our idea of time, right? I mean, really, has it been a half an hour?
I know time flies when we're having fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Lon. And again, if you'd like to connect with her, you can at her website, sacredgeometryactivationsoracle.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just what moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Friday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.